The woman's voice was already raised when I became fully aware of the moment. It wasn't just irritation in her tone. It carried the sharp edge of someone convinced she was delivering moral judgment rather than simply reacting. She stood in the aisle beside us, a brown floral dress swaying slightly with the plane's movement, her short blonde bob rigid, as if even her hair refused to relax. Her finger pointed directly at us, trembling with indignation. "You two are being completely inappropriate. Have some decency. There are people here who don't want to see that." Her voice carried down the aisle, drawing the attention of half the row behind us. The cabin felt smaller, the air thick with a static tension of embarrassment. I sat in the aisle seat, Lily next to the window. Her hand rested lightly in mine, fingers gently interlaced, just as they had been before takeoff. That was all we were doing, no kissing, no hugging, not even leaning on each other, just holding hands like any couple sharing a quiet, private moment. The flight attendant stepped closer, raising a calm hand. "Ma'am, please lower your voice. They're not violating any policy." Susan didn't even glance at her. Her eyes stayed locked on us as if our very presence were a personal offense. Her expression carried that peculiar self-righteousness of someone convinced they're protecting society from collapse, as if our simple gesture was a crime against decency. "We're just sitting here," I said softly. Her nostrils flared. "You're practically climbing on top of each other." "It's disgusting." I stayed silent. I felt Lily stiffen beside me, her fingers tightening around mine. She wasn't prone to tears, but she felt deeply quietly. I wanted to protect that part of her. The flight attendant tried again, firmer this time. "Ma'am, please return to your seat. You're disturbing other passengers. This is a family flight," Susan snapped. There weren't any children within 3 rows of us, but pointing that out would have done nothing. The eruption in the aisle wasn't the beginning. It was just when the tension reached its peak. It had started about an hour earlier, during boarding. I'd noticed her the moment she stepped onto the plane. She drew attention not with her appearance, but with irritation that seemed to radiate from her very being. She spoke loudly into her phone about delays, the world going soft, people not knowing their place. She tossed her bag into the overhead compartment with more force than necessary and exhaled dramatically, as if existing near others cost her energy. That's when I first heard her name, Susan. Someone behind her politely asked if she could step aside. "Give me a moment." "I'm not done yet," she snapped. The other passenger waited in silence until she finally sat, releasing a self-satisfied sigh as if she had won some invisible victory. Lily had leaned closer to me back then, whispering, "She's going to be a problem." Not scared, just perceptive. Lily notices the small things that reveal everything. We had been excited for this trip, a quiet 4-day getaway to a coastal town. Nothing fancy, just time together, away from work, emails, and city noise. I'm 35 now. I don't need chaos or spectacle to feel alive. I just need her. The way she looks at the ocean, like it's an old friend. The way she laughs, full and real, coming from the center of her chest. The way she rests her head on my shoulder during takeoff because flying still makes her just a little nervous. We sat like that, hands intertwined, quiet and content. And Susan sat across the aisle, glancing toward us every few minutes. Not just glancing, but measuring, judging. There was something in her eyes that said our happiness inconvenienced her, that our closeness offended her, that she had appointed herself the moral warden of row 17. The first comment came softly. "So I thought I'd misheard." "Shameless," she muttered. I turned my head slightly. "Sorry?" She didn't look at me, just stared straight ahead. Some people don't know how to behave in public. Lily shifted, withdrawing her hand, not because she agreed, but because I could feel her instinct to avoid conflict. I didn't want her to pull away, so I gently took her hand again. Not possessive, not forceful, just grounding her. "Ma'am," I said, keeping my voice steady. "We're just sitting." She looked at me then. Her expression tightened, eyes sharp, mouth pursed as if she'd just tasted something rotten. "You're touching," she said. For a moment, I wondered if this was really happening. I'd dealt with difficult people before, but this was different, surreal in its pettiness. "We're holding hands," I replied calmly. "Yes." "Exactly," she hissed as though I had confessed to a crime. I stayed quiet, thinking the silence would diffuse her, that she would tire and retreat into her own world. That was a mistake. People like Susan don't walk away from battles they invent. They escalate until they get the reaction that validates their outrage. So she waited. Every few minutes, another little sound, a sigh, a scoff, a muttered word, and the air around us tightened. Conversations in the surrounding rows quieted, the kind of hush people adopt when they sense an argument forming but are too polite to stare. Then Lily laughed softly at something I said. Not loud, not exaggerated, just a warm, natural laugh shared between two people who cared for each other. And that was the spark. Susan stood so abruptly her tray table shook. "I have had enough of this." She pointed at us right there in front of everyone. The flight attendant, a young man with calm eyes, stayed professional. "Ma'am, I need you to return to your seat now." Susan didn't move. "No, they need to stop. This is unacceptable." I held my breath, not from fear, but because I could feel Lily shrinking beside me, her quietness turning fragile. This wasn't about embarrassment. It was about dignity. I looked at Susan, really seeing her for the first time. Not just angry, not just judgmental, lonely. People who hate joy usually are, I could have argued. I could have matched her tone. I could have said something to fracture the air like glass. But I didn't. I spoke quietly instead. "We're not doing anything wrong. Please just sit down." For a single second, I thought she might. Her face twitched, a flicker of uncertainty, a hairline crack in her self-righteous armor, but she doubled down. "You should be ashamed of yourselves." The flight attendant's voice sharpened. "Ma'am, if you do not return to your seat, I will have to involve the lead cabin attendant." That was the moment the cabin shifted. Everyone realized this was no longer just uncomfortable. It was now a problem. Passengers leaned forward slightly, eyes darting between us. The plane hummed, engines steady, air vents whispering. Lily's hand trembled in mine. I held it steady. Susan didn't sit, but she didn't speak either. She stood there, breathing hard like she was preparing for a second wave of attack. The moment stretched, suspended in something electric. I felt a quiet understanding settle inside me. This wasn't over. But the next round would not be on her terms. Even after Susan returned to her seat, the air never normalized. The argument left a residue clinging to every surface. Conversations stayed low. Pages turned slower in books. Even the hum of the vents seemed quieter, as if the airplane itself was bracing for what might come next. Lily sat with her shoulders slightly hunched, her gaze fixed on the window. All she could see was a flat expanse of clouds, but her slow blinking told me everything. That was the look she wore when she decided something wasn't worth fighting for, when silence felt like dignity. I hated that she had been forced into that. Her hand rested in mine, but the grip had changed, no longer relaxed, more like a lifeline tethering her to the moment. I leaned closer, voice low. "Are you okay?" She nodded, but didn't speak. Sometimes nods mean everything except yes. Across the aisle, Susan sat rigid, spine not touching the seat back, arms crossed so tightly they seemed fused to her body. Her chin lifted as if she expected approval from some invisible audience. She wanted to be seen as righteous. She wanted us to feel shame. Time stretched in slow increments, measured only by the plane gliding through air currents. The flight attendant checked on us quietly, setting 2 small cups of water on our trays without ceremony. His eyes said more than words could. He had seen passengers like Susan before. Entitlement rarely fades on its own. It festers when unchecked. The disturbance began again nearly 20 minutes later. Not loud at first, a sigh that pierced the quiet, then another, a muttered complaint, then a louder scoff. She shifted dramatically, as if the very concept of sharing air with us was intolerable. A man 2 rows ahead glanced at her, disapproving. She saw it, but instead of reflection, she seized it like fuel. "This is ridiculous," she announced to no one and everyone. "I shouldn't have to sit here and pretend this is normal." The words landed like a stone. Lily's head lowered just slightly. That was what hurt the most. Not the yelling, not the accusations, not the hostility, but seeing the person I loved shrink. I drew a slow, deliberate breath. "We're really not doing anything," I said, calm and steady. It almost felt absurd having to state such a simple truth. Susan turned sharply, her expression sharpening into something triumphant. "Oh, you're doing plenty," she spat. "She's practically hanging on you." "She's sitting," I replied. "You're touching," she countered, as if delivering a crucial piece of courtroom evidence. A few passengers glanced toward us, but this time their expressions had shifted, not curious, not entertained but annoyed with her. The woman in the row behind leaned forward slightly. "Ma'am, they're literally just sitting there. Can you stop making this a problem?" It was said gently, reasonably, but to someone like Susan, reason was. Gasoline, her neck snapped around. "Excuse me, I'm allowed to speak. This is a free country." The woman behind her remained calm. "Yes, and everyone here is allowed to not be bothered by you." A soft ripple of quiet laughter spread in pockets through the surrounding rows. Not loud, not mocking, just enough to make Susan feel surrounded. Her face flushed crimson. "Unbelievable," she muttered. The flight attendant returned, his patience thinner now. "Ma'am, this is the second time I'm asking. Please lower your voice and stop harassing other passengers." Susan's breathing quickened, short, shallow inhalations. Her indignation was nearing a breaking point. She stood again. This time no subtlety. "She's practically straddling him," she declared. The cabin froze. It was so wildly untrue it bordered on comical. But comical can be cruel when delivered with conviction. Lily's head snapped up. Her eyes, once filled with hurt, now glimmered with shock and humiliation. I didn't move or speak. I simply observed the moment crystallize. She had crossed a very different line. The lead flight attendant arrived, alerted by the escalation. A composed woman with precise posture, eyes trained to assess efficiently. She spoke calmly but without softness. "What exactly is the issue here?" Susan lifted her chin, anticipating vindication. "This couple is engaging in inappropriate behavior. They're making me uncomfortable. I've asked them to stop multiple times." The lead attendant looked at us, then at the space between our hands, still intertwined. No bodies leaning, no intimacy beyond simple closeness. Then she turned to the other passengers. "Has anyone here observed inappropriate behavior?" Silence. A man across the aisle raised a hand slightly. "They've just been sitting. She's the only one causing issues." Others nodded, quietly supportive. Truth spoken without force gathers allies. Susan's mouth opened, disbelief rising. "You're all ignoring what's right in front of you." I could have argued, defended ourselves, apologized for existing. But something had shifted inside me. A calm clarity. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. Not dramatically, not threateningly, just with steady certainty. "I've been recording since your first accusation," I said, even when we were just sitting quietly. "We can review it if needed." The effect was immediate. Her face drained, then flushed again, caught between fight and sudden awareness of vulnerability. The power balance reversed in a heartbeat. "You can't record me without permission," she stammered. The lead attendant shook her head. "Passengers may record in public spaces on the aircraft as long as it doesn't interfere with safety. Given the circumstances, this is within reason." Heads turned openly now. Eyes watched. The dynamic had shifted from private conflict to public accountability. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't move aggressively. I simply held the phone in my hand, screen dark, evidence ready. "We can clear this up. Right now," I said. Susan didn't sit. She didn't speak. But something inside her wavered, her confidence cracked. Her certainty faltered. The force of her indignation no longer had solid ground beneath it. For the first time, she looked unsure. The lead attendant spoke, voice firm. "Ma'am, return to your seat. This is your final warning. Any further disruption will result in formal action when we land." Susan didn't argue. She sat down, but her eyes didn't stop burning into me, into Lily, into the space where our hands remained joined. Her silence now carried something dangerous, a promise that she was not done. Not yet. The plane continued through smooth air, but the atmosphere felt brittle, as if even the smallest word could shatter it again. Susan sat rigidly, facing forward, yet every few moments she glanced sideways at us. Simmering resentment etched across her face. Her jaw was clenched so tightly I could see the muscles shift beneath her skin. People like her rarely admit defeat just because the world tells them they're wrong. They wait for the moment they think they can reclaim their imagined moral high ground. Lily exhaled slowly beside me, a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Her fingers loosened slightly in mine, but she didn't let go. There was tension in her posture, but also something steadying, something changing. She wasn't shrinking anymore. The humiliation had passed. What replaced it was quiet resolve, unmistakable. I leaned close, voice low, just for her. "Are you all right?" She nodded. This time the nod meant yes, but Susan could not let peace settle. She shifted in her seat, huffed, and pressed the call button above her. A soft ding echoed overhead. The lead flight attendant returned, professionalism intact but patience visibly thinning. "What do you need?" she asked, tone measured. Susan lifted her chin. "I need you to move me. I refuse to sit next to people who are behaving inappropriately." She said refuse like it carried legal authority. The attendant stayed composed. "There are no available seats," Susan scoffed. "Then move them." The attendant shook her head. "They have done nothing wrong. You are the disruptive party in this situation." The words landed like a stone in still water. Passengers shifted, not toward us but toward her. Susan's lips thinned. "So you're taking their side?" The attendant didn't blink. "I am enforcing policy and protecting the comfort of all passengers. If the behavior continues, we will file a formal incident report and request security to meet the aircraft when we land." The word security struck her harder than any argument could have. Her posture faltered. Her bravado flickered. She wasn't afraid of being disliked, she was afraid of consequences. Her voice was quieter but no less bitter. "This is ridiculous." "It is your last warning," the attendant replied, walking away. Susan didn't call after her. She didn't stand. She didn't shout. She simply stared straight ahead, fury and humiliation coiling inside her, volatile and directionless. The remainder of the flight passed in tense silence. No one spoke loudly. No one shifted abruptly. Even the hum of the beverage cart wheels rolling down the aisle seemed softer. People had witnessed a conflict nearly erupt, and the cabin remained quietly on edge. And now they were waiting for the landing, where words would finally be replaced by consequences. I didn't feel victorious, not yet. Justice only became real when it settled, not when it was promised. The plane descended. The captain's voice crackled over the speakers, reminding everyone to fasten their seatbelts. Cabin lights brightened slightly, turning the interior into a stage where nothing could hide. Lily leaned back, closing her eyes. I watched her breathing finally settle into something steady. The wheels touched down with a gentle thud. The engines shifted pitch as the aircraft slowed along the runway. Passengers rustled, preparing to stand as the seatbelt sign remained lit, but no one moved. Everyone waited. They knew something was about to happen. The sign chimed. People began gathering their belongings. I didn't stand. Neither did Lily. We weren't rushing to leave. We were staying to witness the ending. 2 uniformed airport security officers entered calmly through the front. They didn't stride in with force, just the quiet confidence of people who had done this before. The lead flight attendant approached them, gesturing toward Susan. Susan's head snapped up. "I didn't do anything wrong." "They're the ones." One officer raised a polite hand, the kind that halts without aggression. "Ma'am, we need to speak with you off the aircraft." Her voice climbed an octave. "I'm not going anywhere. I have the right to—" "Ma'am," the officer repeated, calm but firmer. "Please collect your belongings." The surrounding passengers remained silent, not cruelly, but in collective expectation. They had seen enough to understand. Susan grabbed her bag with jerky movements, muttering under her breath. Every motion was stiff with humiliation. She attempted one last stand, turning toward us. Her voice trembled with fury. "You should both be ashamed." I met her gaze without hostility, without satisfaction, just certainty. We hadn't made the scene. Her mouth moved as if to respond, but no words came. Her own actions had become her silence. She walked down the aisle, escorted between the officers, and something subtle but significant happened. The passengers didn't clap, didn't cheer, didn't gloat. A few exhaled. A few exchanged knowing glances. One person nodded slightly in our direction. The acknowledgement was small but powerful. When she disappeared from view, the cabin felt different. Air circulated again. Tension released. Conversations returned to normal. Lily leaned her head on my shoulder, not seeking comfort but settling into it. We exited the plane slowly. No rush, no urgency. Outside the gate, we saw Susan at a distance, speaking with airport staff, her arms flailing, pointing back toward the plane in a desperate attempt to reclaim the narrative. But it was too late. Her story had already failed to find witnesses who believed her. We didn't stop to watch. We didn't need to. Later that evening, after arriving at our hotel, my phone buzzed. A message request. A stranger from our flight had found me on social media. "Hey, I was sitting in row 18. I recorded part of what happened when she yelled the second time. Thought you might want it. People like her shouldn't get to rewrite the story." The video was clear. The angle captured Susan standing, voice raised, finger pointed, the cabin watching her instead of us. The recording didn't vilify her. It simply showed the truth. Raw, unedited, undeniable. I didn't post it. Not then. I wasn't interested in revenge. I wanted peace, but the internet does what it does. Someone else posted their own recording. It circulated fast. People commented, analyzed, argued, but overwhelmingly people understood. In the days that followed, Lily and I walked along the quiet shoreline of the town we had traveled to. The waves rolled in slow, steady rhythm. The sky stretched endlessly above us. She held my hand again, just as before, but this time without hesitation, without shrinking, without wondering who might be watching. She stopped walking and turned to me. "Thank you for not letting her make me feel small." I shook my head. "You were never small. She just wanted you to feel that way." Lily smiled, not soft, but strong, the kind of smile that takes root and grows. We continued walking along the coastline. The sound of the waves carried the world forward. And somewhere out there, Susan was left facing a truth she had spent a lifetime avoiding.